I want to hear cannons. Three-step drop, throws on the end zone. On ball, touchdown Tampa Bay. Mike Evans reaches up with one hand and grabs it in. Here they go again. Timbo mode, dropping the throw. Winston out again, throws to the left. It's intercepted at the 35. Outside the numbers to the 40, to the 35, to the 30, to the 25, to the 20, to the 15, 10. Mike Edwards, touchdown Tampa Bay. That's the dagger, my friend.
This is the Big Nasty. Yeah, Big Nasty. Hall of Fame Tampa Bay Buccaneer fan, baby.
This is Mike Allstott, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you're listening to the Cannon Fire Podcast.
Cannon Fire Podcast, brother. You ain't listening, and you're missing out. Woo!
And there the cannons go. Fire them. Keep on firing them. Keep on firing them.
Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a brand new edition of the Cannon Fire Podcast. Live on YouTube today. Welcome back to the show. I am your host, as always, Rhett Matthew. Joined alongside me, my good buddy and co-host from BucksNation.com, Mr. Evan Wanish. Joining us as well, good friend of the show, also from BucksNation.com, Mr. James Hill joins the program. We are live today as we preview the Tampa Bay Buccaneers wrapping up Week 13 of NFL action on Monday Night Football in Raymond James Stadium. Some NFC South football. Clearly the best division in football this year, ready to go at it. Two of the top teams representing. And the Buccaneers going to try and hold on to that coveted division lead because as of right now, with a 5-6 record, seems like even though the NFC South is in shambles, the Bucs are going to have to win this division if they have any hope of making a playoff run here in 2022. Welcome back to the show, though. Evan, James, how are we feeling? Got a lot to talk about today.
Hello. And another note, we are doing this obviously on Sunday, so we have the results of the 1 p.m. games, and the Falcons lost to the Steelers. So that means no matter what happens tomorrow night, whether the Bucs win, lose, or draw, they will still be in the lead of the NFC South. It's like you said, just a juggernaut of a division this year. But yeah, they will still be in the lead. They could be 5-7 and still in first place of the NFC South. So kind of crazy. But yeah, here we are. And it's despite that not really mattering, right? You're still going to be in first place no matter what. This still feels like almost a must win because if they lose this game, you basically have to be perfect the rest of the way, I think. And if you lose this game, I think you could be looking on the outside in when it comes to playoff time.
Yeah, I think that, I agree with that 100%. I mean, if you lose this game, I mean, my gosh, it's just going to continue to just get more and more frustrating. And of all the teams to where you have a must-win type of situation, it has to be the Saints. So this should be a very interesting game. Thank you guys for having me on. Greatly appreciated. And really happy to be talking about all the topics we're going to be covering today for sure.
Yeah, not only is the magnitude of the rivalry between these two teams obviously something to pay attention to. Every year we talk about playing the Saints. All week long, everybody has this feeling in the pit of their stomach about playing New Orleans. Not only is it a division matchup, but it is a team that, aside from week 2, has gotten the better of Tampa Bay more often than not. And here the Bucs are at 5-6. Listen, you lose this game, you go to 5-7, and yeah, win, lose, or draw, you still have a first place spot in the NFC South. But after 23 years, a 5-6 football team with Tom Brady as their quarterback is just unheard of. And obviously the Tampa Bay Buccaneers doing a really good job this season of making sure that Brady gets the full Buccaneer experience. But let's talk about this team, and let's kind of gloss over the injury report as we break down this game. So the Bucs are coming into this. I mean, the thing that's going to jump out to people the most is the secondary. And when you look back at week 2 against the Saints, when the Bucs were able to put them away for the first time in God knows how long, it was a lot of big plays from the secondary. Mike Edwards, obviously, with the pick 6, multiple turnovers from Jameis Winston. Well, two things. One, Jameis Winston isn't going to be playing, assuming Andy Dalton gets the start here in this one. And all of the guys who made big plays for the Bucs in week 2 are not going to be available. They haven't been ruled out just yet, but a lot of guys in that secondary looking doubtful for Monday night. What are we looking at, Evan?
Yeah, so the only one that's out right now is obviously Tristan Wirfs, which we knew that. That's no shocker there. But Antoine Winfield, who left the game versus Cleveland, is doubtful. So while there is a very outside chance he could play, doubtful means you're most likely going to be out. Sean Murphy Bunting, I believe, is also doubtful. And I believe Mike Edwards, who had one interception, including a pick six against Jameis Winston, really, I think, sealed it, right? Put like an exclamation point on it in week 2. He's also, doubtful. So Jamel Dean had 2 picks against the Saints last time, and might need 2 picks again, because you're going to need somebody in the secondary here to step up. And guy like Carlton Davis even is a little banged up, even though it sounds like he's going to play. He was banged up a little bit during that Cleveland game. So even Jamel Dean went down a little bit. So, it's a beat up secondary right now. The Saints are a beat up football team as well. And I think that this is going to be a different matchup. I think you're looking at it, and the Bucs offense wasn't very good against New Orleans in week 2. Like, it really wasn't. And then the offense woke up a little bit after, the whole Mike Evans, Marshawn Lattimore thing. And then the defense really started with the turnovers, and that really helped. So I think this offense is really going to have to pick up the defense. The defense picked up the offense last time these two teams played. I think now it's going to have to be the offense's turn. Unfortunately, the offense has been like the Achilles heel for this team really all season. The defense has had to pick them up numerous times, and it doesn't. Every time the offense has a shot to pick up the defense, they seem to fail. So we'll see if they can get it corrected on Monday.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
Oh, sorry, and I think one thing that is going to be interesting to pay attention to, as well as like the depth of the safety position. Evan just said, Mike Edwards and Antoine Winfield Jr. are probably going to be out for this game. So you have Keanu O'Neal. I think you can elevate Nolan Turner. Is that correct? Is he still on the practice squad?
Yeah. I believe he's either on the practice squad but he'll be up most likely. So, you're seeing him. You're going to see a lot of Keanu O'Neal, obviously, in this one. I mean, they're secondary is going to be tested. The depth is certainly going to be tested. You'll probably maybe see a little bit a guy like D. Delaney, maybe. You might see some guys like that, and have to give you some different looks, I think, and they're going to have to get a little creative with it.
Yeah, 100%. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here. Even with the injuries, I think this is probably the most banged up the Bucs defense has entered a game this year?
This year, I would say so. The defense has stayed relatively healthy, I would say, but the secondary is pretty rough. They did go in, I believe it was the Carolina game that they didn't have Carlton Davis, they didn't have Antoine Winfield, and I think they were down somebody else. I forget who it was, but other than that, this is the most banged up the defense has been. Really, they've been pretty healthy the entire year, and especially the secondary last year was really banged up for a lot of it, and they were able to get healthy and stay healthy this year until this point. But one thing before we get really into it, I have to note this because I think it's important. The Bucs offense, I think, would be making huge strides if they would just score a touchdown against them. The last time the Bucs scored a touchdown against New Orleans in Raymond James Stadium was November 17th of 2019. That was they haven't scored a touchdown against New Orleans in Raymond James Stadium in
over 3 years.
Over 3 years. It's been over 3 years since they scored a touchdown. They scored 3 points in 2020, and they scored 0 points in 2021. So, and now, congratulations, we're doing another red out. So that makes a lot of sense.
Let's talk about this offense so far this season. I know you had alluded to it earlier. You said the defense has had to pick them up so far this year. And coming into this game, obviously, with some guys in the secondary, you're missing a lot of starters back there. It's going to be tough, and you're going to need your offense to be in a position to step up. And to be quite frank, I don't mean to make this doom and gloom, but that's a pretty tough ask for this Buccaneers offense. If there's one thing they haven't been able to do this year, just like you said, I mean, I know they haven't scored a touchdown against New Orleans and Raymond James in 3 years, but it feels like they haven't scored a touchdown in general in Raymond James since last season. I mean, seriously,
to be fair, it has been a little bit since they played in Raymond James Stadium since the Rams game. So a little bit.
I mean, with only 3 home games left, this is obviously going to be a big one as well. They got to find a way to make it work, and I just don't get a good feeling. I don't get a good feeling about this offense coming into this week. Mike Evans, Marshawn Lattimore, that was obviously something to talk about after week 2's game with Mike getting ejected. So that's still going to be there. Marshawn Lattimore is going to be playing the best of his ability to cover Mike Evans, who has obviously not been himself, has been playing through injury. Let's not forget the shot that he took to the ribs a couple of weeks ago and decided to come back and stay in the game.
Here's the thing though. You're playing though. You're healthy enough.
And he has been in positions to make plays regardless of the injury. So I do agree he does have to step up, but I don't know if this is the week that he does it. Like I don't feel like I don't feel like Dennis Allen and New Orleans, even though their record is what it is, everybody knows it. This is their Super Bowl. This is the 2 games a year that New Orleans plays their best possible football. And Dennis Allen is going to have those guys ready to go because they've already been slighted once against Tampa Bay, and you better believe they're not going to get swept this year, going down without a fight. I mean, especially swept by the 5-6 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like, I just basically what I'm trying to say is I don't get a lot of great feelings about this game.
Yeah, I mean, the Saints are, Bucks are 5-6, Saints are 4-8. Like, if the Saints win, they go to 5-8, Bucks go to 5-7. They're basically the same team. Like, the Saints have been disappointing this year. Obviously, the Bucks have too. And, I obviously we don't cover the Saints, so I'm not following them, every single week. I don't know the exact issues. I know health has been a real problem. Their offense has struggled. Their defense hasn't been quite the same, even though it's been good at times. But the fact is, a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, New Orleans is terrible. You can't lose to them." Look, everybody knows what this matchup is for the Bucks. I don't care. Like, if the Bucks were 1-10 and the Saints were, 0-11, like, I don't care. Everybody knows what this matchup is. If the Bucks were, sitting atop of the division at, 8-3 or something, and New Orleans was down here, it was going to be a close game. It's just, that's how these two teams play each other. That's how New Orleans plays Tampa, I should say. Like you said, it either seems like it's a really close game and then it's a coin flip, or New Orleans just dominates. And luckily, the Bucks were able to flip the script on them in New Orleans. Or else, I mean, we could be talking about a completely different season.
Yeah.
If the Bucks dropped that game, Bucks are only sitting here. They're sitting here at 4-7 right now. I mean, that's a completely different feeling. It's, people are going to say, "Oh, the Saints are terrible." Look, I don't care about that. Like, you can throw out the records. Like, if the Bucks lose this game, it's not going to be a surprise. But it's also not going to be a surprise if they win this game, because yes, New Orleans has struggled, and the Bucks have to start becoming a desperate team. They have to start becoming a desperate team, because despite the Falcons losing, despite the NFC South being brutal, like brutally bad, you don't want to walk into the playoffs like that. Like, you want to go into the playoffs with some momentum, and I think they need to start building it, and it needs to start happening this week, especially when you have weeks 14 and 15 against San Francisco and then Cincinnati. Like,
San Francisco, by the way, just lost Jimmy Garoppolo, who was carted off in that game.
We'll have to look at that, but that's still, I mean, despite the quarterback, that's a tough traveling across the country.
Yeah.
You got two tough games. You got 2 tough games here. So this is an important one. I think this is a very important one. And how sweet would it be, though, after New Orleans swept you 2 years in a row, to be able to sweep them back? That would be pretty sweet, but we'll see if they can get done.
I think for a lot of people, the Bucs sweeping New Orleans this year would be just the perfect crescendo, I guess, to what has been just a hilarious.
It would be a bright spot.
You want to talk about silver lining? The 1 year that you swept the Saints, you had to give up everything else just to do it.
It's the 1 year they sweep the Saints and then beat the Rams, but they can't beat anybody else.
It's the Thanos meme. Did you do it? Yes.
Yeah. What did it cost you? Everything. So let me ask you this, James. We talk about the possibility of the Buccaneers losing this game, falling to 5-7 on the season, and regardless of still having a lead in the NFC South, this game to a lot of people not only feels like a must win, But it feels like the Bucs' last chance. You know what I mean? Like Evan had said, you go to 5-7, you got to play some pretty damn good football down the stretch against some tough teams. And I just don't know if a 5-7 Bucs team would be able to play that well down the stretch. I don't have that much faith that if they lose tomorrow night, they're really going to go run the table here and wrap this thing up. So is this week, this Monday night game against New Orleans, I mean, it's a must win, obviously, but is this their last chance of the season to really change some people's minds and hopefully ignite something on this team?
In some ways, yes, and in other ways, no. Like I envision this team to probably finish like 9-8 at this point, or 8-9. And honest to God, like that might be good enough to win the NFC South. So like whenever you're saying like, is this their last chance in terms of like, oh, if they lose this game, they're just for sure not going to make the playoffs. I mean, I don't know if I would say that, but like, is this their last chance to, like what you said, I guess, prove to people that they can still be a very competitive team? Yeah, I would say that's a probable thing. And to be honest, like, I don't know how they're going to show up. I mean, me and Evan talk about this all the time. Like, prove it, like until you show us evidence otherwise, we're going to think this. So for example, we've been talking about the Bucs offense. So until the Bucs offense proves that they can be a competitive, good offense that is able to complement the rest of this team, it's not going to happen, or at least you can assume it's not going to happen. So that's kind of where I'm at with that, where in terms of like last chance stuff, in terms of like playoff chances, no. In terms of like maybe proving that this offense can be good and competitive, I mean, yeah, maybe the last chance before a lot of people just say, all right, yeah, just pack up this offense, man. This offense ain't it, Chief. So I don't know. It depends on where you're looking at regarding that question.
I mean, you say they go 9-8. Going 9-8 would require you to go 4-2 down the stretch. You lose this game, right. You ain't going 4-2 down the stretch.
Right.
You lose this game, then you got to go 4-1 in your last 5 games. I don't think that would be happening. So luckily though, I mean, again, if you're just looking at it from the bright side, I do think 8-9, maybe even 7-10 would be enough to make the playoffs, win the South and make the playoffs. 6-11, probably not. Like if you only win one more game, you're probably missing out, because somebody's going to step up, and like either New Orleans or Atlanta. Like Atlanta, I think, has one of the easiest remaining schedules. Like they're going to win one of the games, and that's what would happen there. But I think if you're just looking at it from a from a bright side standpoint, I don't know if 9-8's very realistic, especially if they lose tomorrow. I think it has to. If you want any shot at a record like 9-8, you got to win tomorrow. But I think even 8 or 7 wins might win you this division, which is crazy to think about.
Let's talk about Todd Bowles really quick. We are finally a week removed from that timeout fiasco at the end of regulation against Cleveland. Obviously Todd Bowles didn't say anything over the week that's going to give people that much more faith than they had after the overtime loss last Sunday, but let me ask you this loaded question. Here the Bucs are at 5-6, still a realistic shot to win the NFC South, and there's a lot of hypotheticals you can have with this. But one, is Todd Bowles on the hot seat? And two, does he deserve to be there? Because you are 5-6, you do have Tom Brady, and this is, I'd say 90% of the team that won 13 games last year and 11 games in a Super Bowl the year before. I know it's not fair to compare year to year, but safe to say expectations have not been met. Now, would it be unfair to Todd Bowles if he is one and done after this season, even if the Bucs are 8-9, win the NFC South, and they're a first round playoff exit? Does he get canned?
So this is, I wrote an article about this on bucksnation.com. Just asking that question, that very question: is Todd Bowles on the hot seat? Does he deserve to be on the hot seat? And you can go read that on bucksnation.com right now. It's up there. But in shorter words, I said yes. But also, you say 90%. To be fair to Bowles, I don't think it's 90%. They're going to go into that game tomorrow. Donovan Smith is the only offensive lineman that's going to start in that game. That started for the Bucs last year. Rashad White, likely starting running back, wasn't on the team last year. Russell Gage might be back, wasn't on the team last year. So, there's a lot of turnover, I think, a lot more turnover than people think. But at the same time, the roster is still too talented to be 5-6. Like, despite that turnover, despite Ali Marpet retiring and Alex Kappa going and the Ryan Jensen injury and Rob Gronkowski not returning and this and that, there's too much talent. And I think that's the issue. So I do think that, that's not saying that is not, and I make that clear in the article as well. That's not saying that he needs to be fired. That's not saying that. However, there does need to be some heat on there. I don't think he should be completely safe, because they're too good to be where they are at this point in the season.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think that whenever you both brought up good points in the case of what you were saying, Evan, of course, the article at bucksnation.com. Yeah, it's just inexcusable, at this point. And Rhett, to your point as well, you have Tom Brady at quarterback. You have so much talent on this team, not just offensively, but also defensively.
And this isn't a busted up 45-year-old Tom Brady like a lot of people were hoping it would be this time of year. This is Tom Brady who very clearly is still capable of making plays to at least score some goddamn touchdowns. Like, you don't even have to lead the NFL in touchdowns or passing yards. Just score a fucking touchdown. And this offense is unable to do that in any way, shape, or form. Hell, they needed 3 points to put away Cleveland last week, and they couldn't even do that.
Yeah, and I think whenever you combine situations like that, just the ineffectiveness on offense, I know Todd Bowles has said he has talked to Byron Leftwich, throughout the season and whatnot. If I'm going to be completely honest, and I mean, I've been talking about, a lot of people have been talking about this for weeks, like, Byron Leftwich, I feel like that situation should have been like heavily looked at in terms of, hey, do we actually need to move on from this guy? Because I would say some of the blame is on Byron Leftwich to a certain degree as well. It's kind of on Todd Bowles in terms of, in some way, shape, or form. And I know execution is a thing as well, but accountability on that coaching staff needs to be a thing.
Sorry, go ahead.
But I would also say, game time decisions, that Cleveland game, Evan said it in his article, inexcusable. It's inexcusable. It basically, in big part, lost them that game. And what was worse was the explanation. Oh, he didn't want to throw an interception. And everybody's talked about it, laughed about it to death, but like, Tom Brady's your quarterback, and you're worried about throwing an interception.
Not only is Tom Brady your quarterback, but the same Tom Brady who, let's be honest, threw a fair amount of picks his first 2 years in Tampa. I mean, nothing, extraordinary like we have seen in the past, and nothing that was downright criminal, but he had a couple of picks. He has 2 this year. 2 interceptions in 400-something pass attempts. Like, the math just isn't mathing, my friend. And I hate to cut you off here, but I'm probably going to go on a rant about accountability in this coaching staff, because this is where I have lost faith in Todd Bowles and Byron Leftwich. I mean, obviously, not every coach is going to be great at talking to the media. Todd Bowles is obviously not one of those coaches. But you had mentioned accountability, and we talk about holding people accountable for what the Bucs look like in 2022, and there's absolutely none of that. And a point, basically a line that was drawn in the sand for me, was when they were asking Byron Leftwich about some of the things that had gone wrong and maybe the timeout management, and he delegated his responsibilities to someone else. Like, they asked him what happened there, and he's like, oh, that's a Todd Bowles question. That's a head coach question. What the fuck are you doing? Like, I don't know why I get so frustrated about this, but again, it's like, it's every single week. It's more of the same with this team. Like, yeah, they have won some games, and those games have been fun when they're winning, but none of them have been decisive. The Bucs haven't blown anyone out this year. And it's almost like this coaching staff is just perfectly fine with everything that's happening. And Bruce Arians got worked up on the podium. He would get worked up in interviews. Like, he would cuss somebody out at halftime if he had to. And obviously Todd Bowles is not that kind of coach. And to be a successful coach in the NFL, you don't have to be the guy who's always screaming and shouting and waving your arms around. But like, I just don't feel like they act like they give a shit. Like, maybe that's the impression I get. I don't know if I feel alone in this in this opinion, this hill that I'm willing to die on, but I just don't feel like there's any way this coaching staff is really going to rally and figure this thing out at any point in the season. I just do not have the faith that they are going to lead this group of players well enough to do that. Like, am I alone in feeling that way? Do you guys kind of get what I'm saying? Am I really off base here? Like, what am I missing?
Well, I understand what you're saying. Then I'll toss it to Evan, but I did want to add something. Evan, to your point, there's been a lot of turnover, right? A lot. But there's still a lot of talent, again, to what you had said. I agree that, does Todd Bowles need to be fired? No, I'm not saying that, but I do agree with where you're saying, Evan, where you say that seat's got to be hot. Because what you think about is, man, there's going to be a lot more turnover after this season.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're right now in a position where you're 5-6, as of the recording of this, with Tom Brady as your quarterback, he might not be here next year. With all these other players that you have, who all of them might not be here next year, or in the next couple of years.
I mean, you got Levante David's a free agent, Jamel Dean's a free agent, Sean King brings it up all the time. Mike Evans, they're getting older. Like, you're getting another year older. Like,
right. So if you're 5-6 with this team right now, you're struggling with this much talent. How are you supposed to sell on the idea of, no, it's okay, we're going to get better? How? With different personnel? You've already got good personnel. And if those guys leave, how can you sell that this is supposed to get better in future seasons? That's kind of my question with that. So that's something I was just wanted to bring up, and it's an interesting conversation to have. So I agree that, and Evan, I'll toss it to you, with Bowles, does he deserve to be fired, at the end of the year? We'll see how the season ends. If they don't make the playoffs, that's a whole different conversation. But should the seat be hot? I would say, yeah. So Evan, what do you think?
Should at least be warm.
Yeah.
Should at least be warm.
Yeah, warm.
So in the previous 2 years, when Tom Brady came to town, we're talking about the Tom Brady era here. The Bucs were 24-9. That was their record in the regular season. 9 losses. With 6 games to go, they already have 6. In Todd Bowles' first year as the Bucs head coach. In Todd Bowles' first year, then this is why I wanted to bring this up, because you talk about, the roster that's here, like, it may not get better next year. Like, the roster may not be better next year. Todd Bowles' first season with the Jets, he went 10-6. Okay. He was with the Jets for a little bit longer, and then he went 13-34 after that first season with the Jets. Now, some of those Jets teams were not very good, but that might be the case that the Bucs are in possibly as soon as next year. Will they have talent? Yeah. But, if Tom Brady leaves, and let's say they don't go out and get a stud at quarterback. Let's say they want to roll with Kyle Trask. You're rolling with an inexperienced quarterback. Who's to say, like, if you're 5-6 with Tom Brady, what are you going to be with Kyle Trask next year? How many times has Brady sort of bailed you out right now, right? And I think that's a big issue, and that's what has me concerned. Not so much even about this season individually, but like long term, feels like it'd almost be a waste of time. Like, it just feels like this. And I think most Bucs fans would agree. That's why Bruce Arians left this to Todd Bowles. Bruce Arians wanted Todd Bowles to have a shot to be successful, right? Not throw him to the wolves right away in a situation where he might only win 5, 6, 7 games. And if this is the best it's going to get, then how bad is it going to get if that's the best? So feels like to me, that's why his seat should be warm. But again, we're not sitting here saying Todd Bowles should be fired. That day may come in a few weeks, maybe even. That day may never come. We don't know, right? But I do think it's a discussion that has to be had, just because, again, I come back to, there's too much talent on this team right now. It's just there's too much. Are they banged up right now? Yeah. Are they as talented as they were last year? Probably not, right? Like for all of his faults, Antonio Brown is better than Russell Gage. Like, and he is, right? Ali Marpet was one of the best left guards in football. Ryan Jensen, one of the best centers in football. Alex Kappa, a very good right guard. Shaq Mason's very similar, but Alex Kappa was a good right guard. And they had better coaching. Like, yeah, they're not as talented of a team. However, they are far too talented with Tom Brady as your quarterback to be 5-6. And when Brady is your quarterback, there's a certain expectation. If this was Blaine Gabbert right now, I think most Bucs fans would be okay.
Honestly, if you're
leading the NFC
yeah.
South, they'd be like, okay, like, yeah, why not? Like they would be fine with that, but it's not. So like if Blaine Gabbert or Kyle Trask was starting right now, what the Bucs have 3 wins, maybe like 2 wins, like at most, maybe at most 3, I would say. Like so that's my concern that if this is the best it's going to get, and it may not, we may all be wrong, right? They may turn it around next year. There may be some differences, right? Next year they may be pretty competitive, but if this is the best it's going to get, because if this is the best this roster is going to get, then how bad are the next 2-3 years going to be? Like, is it just going to be a bunch of wasted time? So I think the Glazers should be considering, being proactive instead of reactive.
Yeah, no, I think you guys both hit the nail right on the head about it as far as, the concern many people have about Todd Bowles, because if this is the most talented team he's ever going to have and we're sitting here in 5-6, like it doesn't feel like it's going to get any better. And another thing that factors into this is like the championship window talk. And I think that this can factor into the conversation of, why it may possibly be easier to fire him after this season, even if you win the NFC South. Because if you're going to have a lot of turnover with this team,
here, real quick, if they win the South, he's not going anywhere.
I hate to say it, like you usually don't fire a guy who just hung a banner, but if you're 8-9 with a first round exit and Tom Brady just skipped town to go play for San Francisco, I mean, it's just one of those things. I feel like, you can finally move on from the Tom Brady era officially and have even more of a fresh start than you would have had given Todd Bowles a chance with a rookie quarterback or Kyle Trask or, my pick for the job, Gardner Minshew. I don't know. How many games is a Todd Bowles going to win with a Gardner Minshew, with a Kyle Trask, with a Blaine Gabbert, with whoever the hell the Bucs may have post Tom Brady? Or he comes back for year 24 in Tampa Bay and they keep the staff together. Okay, so let me ask you another hypothetical. We're spending a lot of time doing this here. So Tom Brady decides to come back. Todd Bowles decides to come back. Do they move on from Byron Leftwich?
Well, yeah, I think that's more realistic. That's one where I think you could talk about even if they make the playoffs.
Right.
That's one. If they make the playoffs, Todd Bowles is not going anywhere. But if they make the playoffs, let's say they go in at 8-9 and they lose in the first round, they lose like 24-13 or whatever in the first round, then you can maybe talk about something like that. I could see that. However, the Brady thing, and we're going to get a lot of questions about this because it's towards the end of the year now. And I even noted this in a Q&A thing I did with, because I want to bring it back to the Saints game a little bit here, Q&A with a Saints SB Nation site, and talking about Brady and stuff. And I don't know if Brady's going to come back to football. He already retired once. He's got a lot of things going on. He's got that Fox deal waiting for him. But I don't think he knows what he's going to do right now. So if I had to bet, I am going to say that he's likely going to retire. I don't believe he'll be anywhere next year. So that leaves you in the same boat, right? Whether, I think there's 3 outcomes with Brady. 2 of them involve not being on your football team. Like one of them involves him on another team or him retiring. So I think you have to prepare for that, and we'll see. But the point of the story is that we are not advocating for the firing of Todd Bowles. Again, that day may come. However, there needs to be some sort of consequences, regardless of how the season ends. There has to be some sort of consequences, because you built a standard now, right? You built a standard, and I think if you continue to allow this to happen, that standard starts to go back down. This starts to creep back down. And I think you can't let that happen. Football is so much about culture and about building a winning atmosphere. And I think you allowing this to happen with no consequences would really hurt the culture of the team.
And that's where I get as angry as I do with Todd Bowles and Byron Leftwich. I guess just everyone on this coaching staff and this Bucs team this year is that it feels like week after week they have grown complacent with allowing stuff like this to happen. And you can go up on the podium and you can say, yeah, we got to play better. We got to do this better. We got to do that better. But I mean, everyone who's ever come to Tampa Bay and fucking lost has done that. You know, everyone has gone up on that podium and said, we got to play better. We've heard it before. It's the same old stuff. It's because the expectations were so high. And I know that that's not entirely fair on Bowles. We talked about the turnover.
No, but
Ryan Jensen,
how is it not entirely fair, though? How is it not entirely fair? The expectation should be high when Tom Brady's your quarterback.
No, you're right.
You know, and
right.
me and you both predicted them to lose more games this year than they did last year. So we predicted a bit of a drop off.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
But we still predicted double-digit wins, and you know, and we at this point, with the records of all the other teams in the NFC South, this division should be wrapped up right now. We should not be discussing this at all. We should be talking about whether the Bucs are going to get the 3 seed, 2 seed, or 1 seed. That's what we should be talking about right now, not whether they're going to have to be able to hold on to the division or not.
Checking in on the live chat, Brian Shaw makes some really good points. He says the problem is the Bucs don't have the offensive line anymore to run the offense they did the last 2 years. If you want to throw down the field, you need a high-level offensive line in the NFL, and they can't run the ball either, so they are screwed either way. Let's talk about this Buccaneers offensive line coming into this game against New Orleans as we kind of shift focus to the game preview here. You know, we started the show and said that if the Bucs want to win this week convincingly, they're going to have to anchor on to the offense because of the injuries in that defensive backfield. I don't know if this is going to be the best week for that. And when you're already missing an all-pro right tackle and the rest of your offensive line, I think it even more cements the belief that this may not be the week for that, because Cam Jordan and the rest of that Saints defensive line, they are going to be hungry.
Yeah, they want payback. Especially, you know, at the fight and everything that happened week 2. A lot of bad blood there already. So I would expect that defense to come out firing, and it's up to the Bucs to respond. You know, they got to be able to protect Brady. I think that's the biggest thing, especially with Wirfs out. We saw what that looked like in the playoffs last year with Wirfs out, and I think they have to do a better job of protecting him, or else they're going to have no shot in this game. So if you can come up with different ways to protect them, I think you can get some creative ways to get some of your guys to football and hopefully put some points up on the board. James, what do you think is the biggest thing for this offense to have success here?
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to look at that offensive line. You know, I don't know who is going to be tabbed to be that replacement right tackle. I think it's Josh Wells.
Yeah, I would expect that.
So, that's going to be interesting. You know, I imagine Cameron Jordan's going to be probably, I can't remember who Cameron Jordan
I'm sure he'll be looking at Josh Wells. And he's had success against both guys. But
so maybe you get a guy like O'Keefe to help him out in terms of blocking, Kate Otten as well. Like that's really what they're going to have to do in this game to help, you know, with the loss of a guy like Tristan Wirfs. I think that the interior O-lines played better.
Here's the thing really quick. I saw a thing from, sorry, James, didn't mean to cut you off, but I saw a thing from Willie here in the chat, and he said, knew it'd be ugly without Jensen City. Didn't think things would look this bad. Here's the thing. I don't think the offensive line has been that bad. Like, the offensive line has improved over the last, I'd say, 5 or 6 weeks.
And statistically, I know people don't want to give credit because Brady gets the ball out quickly, but statistically, they're still one of the better graded units in the league up until this season. Up until this point in the season,
I don't like the offensive line. Has it been great? No, but like I don't think they don't have 5 turnstiles out there. Like, you know, I don't think it's been as bad as people want to say. I think that's just people wanting to. Having a narrative at the beginning of the season and wanting to stick with that narrative no matter what happens. So the Bucs issues, the issue isn't offensive line is an issue, but I think their issues go beyond that offensive line. Yet again, sorry to cut you off, James, but
I'll add this in as well. I don't think the offensive line is the biggest issue with the offense so far this season. Go ahead, James. I just had to kind of,
No, it's fine. So I thought you were going to do one of those deals where one of you cuts me off again.
Yeah, do it again.
Anyways, now
that we say
to that point, I think that Mason, Hainsey, and now Nick Leverett, now that he's been playing, he should have been playing all season, but you know what? That's fine. Whatever. I've already vented my frustrations on that. Like, I feel like those guys have been playing well. Wirfs was playing obviously great until he got hurt, and Smith has done okay throughout the year. He obviously had
having a rough year.
He had a terrible game against Cleveland,
Yeah,
and he started off the year well.
This has been his worst year in a little bit. He hasn't been awful, but the past 2 years, he was much, much better.
Right. So I do agree, though, with that idea of, the offensive line hasn't been as bad as people make it out to be. They haven't been, great, but they haven't been one of the worst offensive lines in the league. But with that being said, still with Wirfs being out, this offensive line is going to be one to look at. How is Donovan Smith going to rebound from having a really bad game versus the Cleveland Browns? How is Josh Wells going to do against Cam Jordan?
Oh, fun.
That's going to be tough. I think that the interior offensive line should, and I get that the Saints have just a really good front seven. The interior offensive line I'm not as worried about, but I'm specifically looking at those tackle matchups because Donovan Smith just does seem to struggle against New Orleans in certain situations as well. And he's coming off of a really bad game, and now you don't have Tristan Wirfs, and you have Josh Wells, and hopefully they give Josh Wells some support because we've had some really weird situations with, Byron Leftwich's OC where he has guys just going up one-on-one without support, and it gets weird and things go really bad in some situations. Really hope that doesn't happen in this game because the Bucs need to have good blocking to have a chance on offense, like what you guys were talking about earlier.
And but before we do our predictions and everything, I wanted to point out something that Brian Shaw said in the chat. He said Brady has never looked comfortable all season. I think the O-line is bad. Brady plays like he has little confidence in the O-line. I think that's another problem with his offense, but I think that's a Brady issue. There's been a few times where Brady has let the ball go entirely too early. He hasn't let things develop. The one game that he started to let things develop was Seattle, and we all saw how the offense played there. Other than that, sometimes he's just getting the ball out too quick. Like watch the tape, man. Like, you're not under duress constantly. Like, the offensive line was blocked fine. Sometimes Brady gets the ball out too quick. He's giving up on the plays. He's not letting them develop too quick because, and he probably doesn't have much confidence in the offensive line. But I think that that's an issue that he's had this year, is not letting the routes down the field develop more and open things up for this offense a little bit. I think that's been an issue, and part of it, he probably doesn't have much confidence in an offensive line, like I said, but that's something you got to work on. Like, you got to see, man, okay, on this play here, like, I had time, like, I got to start, I got to start trusting these guys more. Like, you got to let something else develop, not throw the check down for 2 yards. So I think that's a Brady issue as well, as well as an offensive line, but a Brady issue as well.
And our buddy Amazement 717 in the chat kind of echoed what I was going to say as well. The offensive line hasn't been the main problem. It's been horrible throws, dropped balls, timing issues, play calls at certain times in the game. Like, it's all situational, obviously, but Mike Evans' drop against Carolina, like, that's not on the offensive line. Brady had time to reel back and throw it. That's a touchdown if it's caught. And unfortunately, Mike Evans just hasn't been the same since. But that's not on the offensive line. Bad play calling from Byron Leftwich in a situation where the Bucs need 5 yards and they can't get one. That's, well, maybe it is on the offensive line. But, there's a lot of things wrong with this offense, and it's hard to pinpoint one thing outweighing all the others because the fact of the matter is they've just been bad. And that's on everybody. That's on the coaches. That's on the players, the execution, whatever you want to call it. You can single guys out if you want to, but this team has been bad, and that's what's most important. Tyler Belcher in chat says play calling has been predictable all season. No changes or adjustments. Bucs offense had 2 weeks to prep for a 3-win team at the moment, and you come out and you do the same crap that you've always done. Nobody has confidence for this team right now. Brian Shaw says it's offensive line, play calling, receivers, and Brady. It's everyone on the offense, really. Everyone has underperformed without a few players like Wirfs. And our buddy Matt Diaz says, I think he's also really feeling the hits more at age 45. Totally understandable. So a lot of takes about this offense, but I think the overall consensus here is that they have not been very good. So I guess let's talk about what they need to do well in this game against New Orleans if they hope to win as we wrap this show up. We'll get some score predictions here in a minute, but on both sides of the ball. I know we talked about the depleted secondary for Tampa Bay, but you still got some playmakers, right? Devin White can still get after the quarterback. Levante David's still going to be tackling everybody in sight. That defensive line would like to see some production from them. If you can get after Andy Dalton this week, that's one way to shut an offense down. So they're going to have to do that and then some. But what do you think? Like, what are the big things on your list, your checklist, if you will, coming into this Week 13 matchup on Monday Night Football?
Yeah, so obviously, number one, I think is protect Brady. I talked about it a little bit, so I'm not going to, we just talked about the offensive line, so I'm not going to get too much into this one, but number one's protect Brady. Number two, though, stay disciplined. The Bucs have had real issues with the Saints, particularly in staying disciplined, playing disciplined football. They sometimes let the emotions get the best of them. I know I reference the fight a lot. There's going to be some tempers flaring in this game. So I think the Bucs have to reel in their emotions and they have to let that go. They have to focus on the game, not committing personal fouls, not getting the stupid penalties, because that's what hurts you. That hurts you a lot more.
How many backbreaking penalties they get against Cleveland? I mean, the Donovan Smith, the hands of the face.
There's a lot of them. Yeah. So I think that, and then I think that you have to get pressure. One of the reasons that New Orleans was dominating Tampa the past few times is Tampa Bay's rush just couldn't get to whoever it was, whether it was Drew Brees, whether it was Taysom Hill. James Winston, they got to him more in the second half. The first half, they really didn't. They need to get consistent pressure. And the Saints offensive line is still pretty good, but Andy Dalton's there. He can play well for spurts, but he's also, at this point in his career, kind of sort of like a journeyman. So I think, you're really helping out your chances on defense if you can get consistent pressure here with 4, not having to blitz, especially with a potential depleted secondary, and not having to blitz and leave those corners and safeties on an island would really, really help. So I think those are probably the 3 things that if you're looking for in this game to be successful, I think you have to do all 3 of them.
James, what are you going to add?
Honestly, there isn't much to add. It's weird because it's the same conversation every time the Bucs play the Saints. It's like, hey, don't get mad, don't make mental mistakes, and just play clean, sound football. And the Bucs still struggle to show that in most instances whenever they play the Saints. So I know that it's going to sound like a broken record, but yeah, there really isn't much for me to add. You've got to play clean football. You can't let the emotions get the better of you. Got to compensate for those losses that you have along the offensive line, and you got to just be better on offense, man. If this turns into again, like we've said it before, we'll say it again. This Saints coaching staff, my gosh, they just seem to outcoach the Bucs at every turn on offense. Whenever they or Bucs offense versus Saints defense. That's got to change. How do you change it? At this point, I don't know. That's up to the coaching staff to decide. But that's some of the biggest things that have got to change, man. And it's going to keep on being the same answer until, it happens. So,
yeah, I think you're going to have to see some major changes in the offensive play calling from Byron Leftwich. He's going to have to call a good game. Like, he's just going to have to. I don't think they should abandon the run. Our buddy Brian Shaw in the chat been bringing up a lot of great points. And one of them is that if you try and get pass happy against New Orleans this week, I don't think it's going to go very well. And I tend to agree. Mike Evans, he's usually covered pretty well whenever the Bucs play the Saints. And I don't think that's going to change. I think he'll be double, triple covered for the entire game. So if he gets a few catches, they're going to be contested. They're going to be tough. He's not always going to be open. So look to your other guys to make some things happen. But I think something that's going to benefit Tampa Bay this week is if they want to get the pass game going, why the hell not show us a little bit more play action on first down? Have you seen Tom Brady's play action stats since becoming a Tampa Bay Buccaneer? Even just this season in particular, he is like one of the best rated quarterbacks on play action. And, I know Byron Leftwich and his old 1984 philosophy on the offense is that, the run game has to work for play action to work. It's 2022. We know that's not the case. And I want to feel like deep down inside, Byron knows that that's not the case, but we'll just have to see. But I would like to see a little more play action on first down. I know we kind of put the narrative to bed that the Bucs always run the ball on first down because they do, but they are not the team in the NFL that's doing it the most. I think people seem to forget that part of the context as well. But you're going to have to mix it up somehow on offense. And I think that's one of the ways you can do it. Take advantage of, a busted offensive line to the best of your ability. Put your guys in the best position to win. And I think that's one of the ways they can do it. Anything else before we do some score predictions?
I got nothing. So
Nothing?
let's get into them.
All right. So I haven't even looked at the lines. I think the Bucs are favored, believe it or not.
I mean, they have the better record and they're at home. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
if you're
last
playing,
I checked, they were favored by 4. Last I checked.
yeah, and that's already a couple of points going the other way if you're playing at home. So let's just say it like this. It's going to be a low-scoring game. I don't think either of these teams are going to crack 24 points. I don't ever pick against the Bucs on this podcast.
It's so funny because you will pick against them in the season predictions, but when it comes to preview shows, you don't.
No. I think the Bucs lose this one, and I think it's a weird final score. I think it's like 16-10, like just something annoying. You know what I mean? Like kind of 9-0, similar colors. I don't think the Bucs get 0 points, but I don't think they get very many, and I do think they fall to 5-7 this week. Evan, what do you think?
Yeah, so the good news is that I have the Bucs scoring a touchdown against the Saints in Raymond James Stadium.
Let's go.
So, progress, I guess you could say.
Are you going to follow up and tell me that that's the only points they're going to score in Raymond James Stadium on Monday night?
Well, the bad news is that's the only touchdown they're going to score.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I think New Orleans is going to win this one 20-13. I just, if the Bucs had a completely healthy secondary, maybe the Saints score a little less. But right now, I'm like, I don't know. So, I just think that there's just with New Orleans sweeping the Bucs in 2020 and 2021, I have a tough time believing that the Bucs are going to come back and just sweep New Orleans. I just have a tough time. The Bucs have had so much trouble against the Saints.
There's so much parity in the NFL that if any year is the year, you know it's gonna be this year.
Oh, I know, but I have a tough time seeing it. So I think it's a close game. It's a low scoring game, but I think that the Saints take this one, and things start to become very, very desperate for the Bucs over the last 5 games here.
You want to talk about a low scoring game? I'm gonna say the score is gonna be 12-9.
Okay.
Wow.
Is that score?
You want to talk about odd score?
Yeah, I mean, is that nothing but field goals?
That's nothing but field goals, baby.
No touchdown safety combo?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. I bold prediction in my Bucs Nation article was that the Bucs weren't going to score a touchdown in this game, and that it was going to be a kickers and defensive duel. Yeah, I'll still go with that. I'll say 12-9, but you know what? I'm going to go against you two here just for the funsies. I'll say the Bucs win. Ryan Suckup, hey. In Suckup we trust. So
yeah. If there's anybody on this team this year who's going to get it done, it's been Ryan Suckup.
Oh no, there goes the jinx.
So I'll give it.
Yeah, I know.
So I'll give it to the Bucs here, but a very stupidly low scoring game. It would be a very frustrating game for sure.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. I wish we could get you amped up for this game and you could listen to this and be like, all right, let's go watch some football. But, we always try to keep it as realistic as we can here on the Cannon Fire podcast. We've never tried to sugarcoat stuff for you guys. And that's going to continue even with the ugly 2022 season playing out the way that it has. But with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that's just about going to do it for this week's game preview episode of the Cannon Fire podcast live on YouTube. Thanks to everybody hanging out with us over here. We truly do appreciate you. Brian Shaw in the chat, Jan, Dark Angel, Tyler Belcher, Willie Beeman, the moderator holding it down. Our buddy Nestor was in here as well. Anybody else that I may have missed, we truly appreciate your support. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already for more great Tampa Bay Buccaneers content. Also, go find the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of those are Cannon Fire Podcast. Best place to go for updates on the show. And of course, Tampa Bay Buccaneer news as it happens. Speaking of Bucs news as it happens, you can follow my co-host Evan on Instagram at Bucs_daily. You can also find him on Twitter at EvanNFL and check out his written work at BucsNation.com. What have you got in the hopper for us?
Just like every week after the game, gonna be looking at just like James's bold predictions. So James predicted no touchdowns. If the Bucs don't score a touchdown, I get to go in and review it and say James was right for once. If they,
I know how much you hate doing that.
I know it's gonna make my blood curl. Yeah, so I'll be having that after the game sometime, probably more likely on Tuesday, probably than Monday night. But yeah, so keep an eye out for that.
Also, shout out to our good buddy James Hill from BucksNation.com. What are you working on? I know you made your staff picks, but you have anything else in the hopper ready to go?
I did an article about who would be the
Doesn't
X
even know.
factor for this game. I picked Ryan Suckup because we're at that point of this year. So I did that. I have some videos coming out about Todd Bowles. Should he be on the hot seat? Spoiler: it was a video that we just recorded while we did this podcast. So so doing that. Obviously, going to be going live for the game tomorrow.
I'm going to give you a copyright strike.
I'll fight you. I don't think I'm going to be going to the game, so I'll just be live. Hopefully, every time I go live for Saints games, my gosh, it feels like such a chore because those games can be so boring. Because just gosh.
Well, that's how the week 2 game felt. It was just a slog for 75% of the game, and then it was boom, 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 Bucks win.
Yeah, so I'm going to be going live for the game tomorrow, and obviously have a ton of content out here on YouTube. Also, go check out Reel to Reel. Myself and Evan, we just uploaded a Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special review, which was pretty cool. And we also have a few more videos coming out throughout the week as well, so definitely go check that out.
Definitely. With that being said, we will talk to you guys win, lose, or draw, I think Tuesday. Because I'm 90% sure I'm going to the game on Monday, so I'll be in Ray J. Not going to get out of there till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. So maybe Tuesday we will be live right here on YouTube, breaking down the game with you guys. Maybe we will be joined by former Bucks quarterback Sean King. Just got to wait and see on that one. But thank you guys so much for checking out this week's show. We will talk to you after the game right here, youtube.com/Canafire Podcast, and any other podcast outlet you check us out on. I'm your host, Rhett Matthew, signing off for my co-host, Evan Wanish, and special guest, James Hill. We'll catch you in the next one. Until then, and as always, thanks for listening, and go Bucks.